Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition, episode 63 of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, talking today about developing rhythm, our main topic, which is something a lot of hitters, I think, struggle with. It's not talked about enough. I certainly struggled with it as a player. In fact, I struggled to even spell the damn word correctly. I noticed that when I printed out my script today. So we're going to talk about that. Plus, we're going to discuss the Major League Baseball draft that occurred this past week. The Mets made some intriguing front office promotions. We'll discuss that. And we're going to put Blast Motion Baseball on blast. All that and more. All that and more. Yes. Glad to have you in today. Thank you for listening on the audio and video side. We do appreciate that. Hope you all had a great weekend. And here's to a great Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All right, let me bring in professional evaluator, successful business owner, my former coach, friend, and co-host, and a guy who just got off a plane. Apparently didn't get much sleep, but he looks great. And I think he had a hand in who the Brewers drafted 15th overall this past week. We'll get to that in just one moment. Jake Epstein, how are you, sir?
I'm tired.
You don't look it. We're wearing the same hat today. We look great.
It was definitely a hat day. It was a short night. Yeah, I flew home from the lab, so I leave on Fridays after we're done, with class. So there's a late night flight out of there, and then I go through Dallas, and nobody's in a big rush apparently to get home or to get off a plane. So anyway, I rolled in the door about 1-something a.m. and hit the head, later than that. So, I'm not a young man anymore. 2 a.m. used to be a fun time of day, but not anymore. I don't want to ever see 2 a.m.
So we're talking today about developing rhythm, and let's kind of get right into it here. Developing rhythm, I mentioned it in the open. It's something that is oftentimes overlooked by coaches on social media and just coaches in person in general. Not by you, though. Developing rhythm, very, very important. It's something that hitters really do struggle with. So what do you feel that developing rhythm really is when it comes to a successful swing?
Well, if you were to look at my player sheet from, like this draft, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a few hundred players on it that I go through and I rank, and rhythm is always one of the grading categories that I use, because it allows players to deflect stress. It allows players to have a routine, and it allows players to adjust to pitches. And that's really, really important. If a rhythm is too fast, if a stride is very fast, it's going to make it hard to control. And if it makes it hard to control, and we only have really one trigger point to that swing, then that player is going to be susceptible to, off-speed pitches or pitches in different part of the zone. So if they don't get their pitch they're looking for at the exact spot, they're going to struggle. So there's a lot of players I go through where, hey, the swing play looks pretty good. Their lower body looks good, but their rhythm isn't good. If they develop a rhythm, then they could be great. If they don't, it's going to be a crapshoot.
Well, we're going to discuss and really dissect developing rhythm here on today's episode, number 63 of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast. Thank you for being in once again, and be sure to subscribe to the show for new episodes every Monday at 9 a.m., Apple, Google, Spotify, and of course on our YouTube page, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast. All right, let's get into the MLB draft that occurred this past week really quickly here. Austin Davis going number 1. To me, he kind of looks like Joey Bart, same body as Spencer Torkelson. Maybe. Do you agree? Austin Davis, number 1, surprise? No, I was a little bit. I said last week my number 1 player was Marcelo Mayo, or however you say his first name. Sorry, Mr. Mayer, whatever. And then Khalil Watson was number 2. And then my guy, you know who it was, number 3. But what do you think, Austin Davis, number 1?
Yeah, surprise to me. I didn't see him going that high. There were so many good shortstops that I really didn't see a catcher going first in this draft, especially a catcher with that size, because it wears the player down. Minor league season at that size and a major league season at that size is difficult. However, he graded really high from me. His swing is fantastic. He's got a weird move with his back foot, which isn't really a bad thing. It looks funny, it kind of flops over a little Mark McGwire-esque, which we haven't seen in quite a long time. But it could be his anatomy. It could be the way that his knees and ankles and tendons and ligaments are put together. But I think that dude's going to hit. That's for sure. I haven't seen him as, from the defensive side. Is Is he, way above average on the defensive scale? Then he deserves to be number one. There were just so many shortstops that were amazing infielders that also had great swings. Now, again, maybe they didn't perform as well as him. They were younger than him, for sure. There were a lot of high school shortstops in that draft. But high school shortstops turn into, big league shortstops, big league third baseman, big league second baseman, big league center fielder. So there's more. You draft a guy that's a catcher. He better really be able to rake, just like Torkelson better be able to be a big league hitter that's going to hit 30 or more home runs and drive in 100 runs, because you're taking him first round and you really don't care about his defense. And, I'm not sure what what his defense is like, if he'll even be a catcher by the time he gets to the big leagues, if he puts on 20 more pounds. Probably not.
Well, the Pirates and Ben Cherington said this a while back. He said, we have to hit on this one because number one overall picks, they don't come every day. They only come once a decade, maybe. And you really don't want that number one. As we've talked about before, you don't really want that number one overall pick. You don't want to be drafting that high. Sal Frelick.
And there could have been a pre-draft deal too. He may have been a guy that said, look, I'll take $1.5 million less bucks, instead of 8 or whatever the slot money is, maybe I'll take 7.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden the Pirates are like, sweet, I can give that extra $1 million and spread it out, or I can give it to a 16th rounder that nobody's really thinking about. Instead of, giving that person, $70,000, I can give that person, $1.5 million. So there could have been all kinds of different tangibles that go in there. Maybe it was a 2-for-1 pick. They got him. And with the savings, they were able to sign a free agent, maybe that said they were going to college. But all of a sudden you throw extra money at them and that changes.
I want to apologize. We've been saying Sal Frelick's name wrong for like the longest time. We've been calling him Frelick. His name is Frelick, and he was one of my favorite hitters. He went pretty high. I thought he was going to go. If I had a report on him, which I do, I would have said he should go second round, no later than third. He went 15th overall to a certain club that you work for. Here's my report, though, and the people on the YouTube side watching are going to see the graphics. This is part of my report that I wrote.
The graphics are great, by the way.
Thank you. This is the part you'll like. This though with Sal Frelick. This is what I wrote up on him back in April for the draft. April. I have the exact date. I have the exact date of another guy I wrote up too. I'll get to that in a second. Back in April. So Frelick, high energy, knows how to compete. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of these. Please do. All around winner, high character makeup. Succeeds against tough competition. Here's his hit tool. I gave him a 60. Game power, 40. Power in general, 50. Speed, 70. Overall future value, 60. Starting major league center fielder. That's the report I wrote up, at least some of it, about 10% of it. I wrote up on Sal Frelick back in April. And I'm going to be interested to see how well and how accurate I was and how well he does. I'm rooting for him. I think he is an absolute winner, and I think the Brewers got this guy at a steal because I thought he was going to be overlooked in the draft. And any team that would have picked him up would have succeeded in their drafting of him, whatever round it would have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a player. He's very undersized in terms of first rounders. That's for sure. He's not a freak. Mm-hmm. By no ways is he a physical freak. Is he, I mean, there's a lot of, was it the Rockies? Was it the Rockies first round pick? They took that center fielder from the East Coast. He's a high school kid. He's 6'3", 211, and he runs like a 6'5" or a 6. I mean, he's a freak.
Right.
Sal's not a freak. He's 5'9", 5'10", maybe 5'10". He's not going to have a ton of power, mm-hmm. but he can hit.
Yeah.
And that's what the Brewers are really good. They use everyone's opinion the right way, mm-hmm. and they use multiple people's opinion. It's not a dictatorship when it comes to scouting. You got a president, executive vice president, you got GMs, you got special assignment scouts, you got cross checkers, you got boots on the ground, and they use everyone to the best of their abilities and what they're good at, and they take that and they put it into, they put it in a special potion of whatever they want to do, and they make good choices.
Yeah.
And Frelick obviously was that choice for them. He was their first rounder, and that's a big deal for any organization. Like, who are we getting behind here in the first round? I see Frelick as a big league center fielder too. I don't know if where he ends up. Is he going to be a 10-year veteran, or is he going to be a 2-year guy? You just never know. You see, what can I think of his name? The first rounder last year, Garrett Mitchell, right? I mean, this poor guy's been injured so much. He's got such great tools, but it's hard to keep him on the field. Is Frelick a sturdy guy that, isn't going to be hurt or play through injuries? I see him as that kind of guy. He's had a really good past, of playing every day and competing, like you said. So I'm very hopeful. I agree, 100% with what you put on your report. And I hope he ends up being a mainstay in the big leagues for him.
Well, I compared his body. You mentioned he's 5'9", 5'10", maybe. His body comp to me was Shane Victorino. And I compared his game, his overall game, his overall comp to that of Chris Taylor. Do you agree with that? Mm-hmm. Chris Taylor or Victorino, certainly, because the body types are very much the same. And I think when he puts on a little bit more muscle, which he can, he's only 22, he'll look more like Shane Victorino when Victorino was older in his career. Chris Taylor type, that was kind of my comp for him as a player.
Yeah, Chris Taylor's pretty whippy with his swing. I would say that Chris Taylor's probably got, a little bit stronger bat. Mm-hmm. At least now. I mean,
stronger wrists,
big leagues for a while. He's figured out. So, maybe Sal ends up that way. Mm-hmm. That would be fantastic because I think Taylor's got a wonderful swing and a wonderful approach. So you never know what happens to guys. They get involved with the minor league system. Maybe they fall in love with a couple coaches that really help them out, and things change. He's a flat swinger. He's a guy, in my opinion, in my report, that he's going to find barrels. His swing plane is going to find barrels. He's going to find a low launch angle barrels. That's his role, though. He's going to be a top of the order guy. He's going to be a defensive guy. He's going to be a gritty guy that can take extra bases and read balls in the dirt, steal bases. That's the guy you want. You don't want him, hitting 225 and hitting, 25 home runs. You want him hitting, 290 to 315, scoring a lot of runs, hitting a lot of doubles, and maybe hitting, 10 or 15 home runs a year at the most.
Yeah, you and I, by the way, liked Garrett Mitchell last year, too, when the Brewers drafted him. We liked him a lot, both you and I.
And same thing, in my opinion, like hand-pass guy.
Yeah.
Great upper body, decent lower body, not a big power lower body yet.
Yeah.
Okay, but his upper body path is a guy that's going to run into barrels. He's not your prototypical now. Is he going to change? Will they make him change into, more of that prototypical big leaguer now that's going to hit, 230, 240, strike out a lot more, hit a lot more balls in the air, hit home runs? I don't know if that's going to happen. But if baseball's going the way that they're thinking, where they're going to do something possibly about the shift, I know that's weird if they do that. But if they go against the shift and all of a sudden you have to have, 2 infielders on each side of the base, now all of a sudden guys that make more contact and guys that have better paths, guys that put more balls in play, they're going to hit for a much higher average. And maybe baseball takes a turn from where it is now to trying to hit everything in the air into the outfield where there's less infielders to, okay, now we can spray the ball around a little bit more because there's more holes out there.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Maybe they're preparing for that.
I noticed that in the draft, too. A lot of college players who were, I don't want to say contact guys, but gap-to-gap guys, Frelick being one. The Yankees, the kid that they drafted, kind of a gap-to-gap guy. A lot of college bats were more contact guys with really good above-average bat-to-ball skills, at least in the first couple of rounds.
Yeah.
Also, too, I want to just kind of pat myself one more time on the back. Sorry,
sure.
I have to. I have to do it. Khalil Watson, I did a report on him in April. I wrote up a report on him in April, and I have his notes here. I found him this morning. So my body comp for him, Brian Hayes, and my player comp, ready for this? Because MLB Network said the same exact thing. Maybe it was ESPN. One of the networks said the same exact player comp that I did, and I was proud of this. Jose Ramirez. That was my player comp, and they said it too, and I said, I think I said it.
Yeah, I do remember that because I remember people saying no one's ever, or was that me? Was it Carlos Baerga too? Was that you that threw that one out there? Something I said nobody's ever been comped with Carlos Baerga.
No, I think it was you that said that. No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't say that. That was you.
Yeah, that's really funny. Nice job.
We do have a question about Jack Leiter too, and we'll get to that towards the end of the show. Before we move on here, do you have any thoughts on the All-Star game? One thought I have about it, and I kind of tweeted about it, alluded to the fact that the players looked loose, and I know it's the All-Star game, they're always having fun, but they looked a lot looser because they didn't have a card in their hat. They didn't have to worry about defensive positioning. Their instincts took over more, and it seemed like they were just having more fun because they knew that they weren't trying to follow a script, or didn't have to anyway, because if they don't follow that script, they may get in trouble. They knew that that wasn't hanging over their head. I don't know. Maybe it just seemed like the natural talent took over.
Yeah, we had, I was working, we had instruction those days, so I only caught at the end of the home run derby and I only caught the end of the All-Star game, but it sure looked fun.
Yeah.
It did. It looked loose. And again, times have been so stressful between all the COVID protocols and testing and travel for all these guys, and you're right. Like, oh, where do I have to be? Every game is, the reason it's 162 games and not 16 is, it's a journey, and if you stress out like, NFL players do and NFL coaches do on every single game of the year, like it doesn't work. Yeah. Players get tight and players get stressed out and players, don't perform to the best of their ability because they're tight. So, I thought it was fun to watch, the 3 innings that I was able to see and the interviews. Like, I'm totally fine with that in the All-Star game, right? Yeah. It really doesn't mean anything anymore, right? Didn't they have a few years where it was home field advantage?
Yeah.
And that's not the case anymore, correct? That went away a few years ago.
Yeah.
So, it really doesn't mean anything. So they should have fun. They should be entertained. They should be loose. What a great play by that left fielder, by the way, that plays first base, and he saved the entire game, right? Mm-hmm. He made that diving catch in the 8th or 9th inning. The left, and I'm thinking to myself, I was a first baseman, right? Not quite All-Star, not quite MLB All-Star caliber.
Close.
Maybe 50 to 60 runs below that. But I played first base. I couldn't even see the ball in the outfield. Like, that's why I played first base, not the outfield, because I couldn't, pick up the ball as well. Mm-hmm. This guy, saves the game, man, with a diving catch on a Chris Bryant top spin, ball moving 110 miles an hour going like this. And he makes up. I got more respect for that guy than I should probably know his name and start his fan club, because that was the greatest stress-free play that I think I've ever seen from a first baseman playing. Hey, go play left field.
There's a lot of great stories too in the All-Star game. Shohei Ohtani, Vlad Jr., Liam Hendricks, of course, who was DFA'd like 20 times and finally an All-Star. So good for him. I think he deserves it.
I liked him being mic'd up.
I did too.
New words.
I did too. Yeah. And I like how Joe Buck and John Smoltz just try to ignore it. I would have went with it, but the restraints are tough.
He was great. His post-game interview was great too.
Yeah.
He's from Australia, right? He's from Perth or something.
Again, we have a question about Jack Leiter. We'll get to that in a little bit. If you do have any questions for the show, email us jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. The Mets made some front office promotions earlier this week, during the All-Star break, and I haven't written down here. And one of those said promotions is the elevation of research and development analyst Jared Faust, who now holds the title of Major League Strategy Coordinator. And Faust, for those of you who don't know, was very implemental in helping Pete Alonso last year, developing a data plan and helping him break out of a slump. So with Faust now being elevated to the position he's in, developing that data plan, I want to ask you, what goes into a data plan to help hitters get out of a slump? I know it depends case by case, but where do you start if you're Faust? Where do you start if you're an instructor like yourself?
Well, maybe pitches where you're missing, right? Mm-hmm. So, somebody that's helping you out on the data side, maybe they're telling you this part of the strike zone you're not seeing. Mm-hmm. You're not seeing you're fouling off or you're missing. So they can start with numbers, right? These numbers are bad. Now let's look at video of those numbers. Are we just taking those pitches to get deep in the count? Are we swinging at those pitches? Are we fouling them off or putting them in play? So you're essentially taking what you're doing incorrectly numbers wise, and you're backtracking to the problem, whether it's an approach problem or whether it's a mechanical problem, whether it's, I'm looking for pitches middle in and all I'm getting is pitches middle away. Okay, well, let's sell out middle away, try to take some balls to right field. okay, well, my approach is good now, but I'm not getting to that pitch. Now, why aren't you getting to that pitch? Well, I'm not letting it get deep enough. I'm pulling off of it. Maybe my front shoulder is shrugging, maybe my top hand, whatever it might be. So you can use data as like kind of a starting point of where that problem may exist. And then you can work your way back to, is it approach? Is it mechanical? Is it rhythm?
Yeah. Also, one final thing here I want to get to. Blast Motion, saw your tweet earlier in the week, and I just have to bring it up. I have to. Blast Motion decided to use the bat on the shoulder drill and make it their own. I mean, why do you guys have to be shysters? I mean, come on, just give credit.
They do.
Blast Motion and Driveline. Just give credit. That's all we ask, right?
Yeah. No, I it's what it is. Like I've seen it before. I've had all my videos in their library for my players for a long time now. When they started doing that, with different drills, I mean, somebody put on there the torque drill, or the fence drill. These are all drills my dad had in his first VHS tape.
Yeah.
In the late '90s that Ted Williams actually funded. He was, part of. He and my dad put the money together to shoot it. And because stuff was expensive back then to get a production company on tape and a studio and lighting and all that jazz. So but that was the original stuff, man. And I still use it. I use it with every player. I used it yesterday with a player, a college softball player that helps us out at the lab. Like we were working on a thing. Hey, do this drill. Let's put it on the shoulder and work on that. So it would be nice actually. And I don't want credit for it, but that was my dad. The whole separation, when people talk about torque or separation or all the drills where you open your hips and keep your shoulders back and then release your upper body, like that was him. That was his idea from hours and hours meeting with Ted Williams, right? And having conversations and Ted saying your hips have to lead your hands. That was one of his big things in his book in the 70s was your hips have to lead your hands. So my dad came up with a drill to do that. And, now everybody has their own take on it and their own spin on it and they repackage it. So, it would be nice to have, credit where credit is due. But that's not really the world that we live in now. People want to be their own person. Yeah. So,
so basically what this all teaches us, lesson of the day, lesson of the show, plagiarism doesn't matter anymore. So all these colleges teaching plagiarism, it doesn't matter anymore because people steal shit or they repackage it like some certain academies. Yeah. They repackage stuff or stats and try to make themselves look smart. Blast Motion, just give credit. Come on. I mean, they blatantly ripped off that drill. I mean, really.
There's hitting coaches, prominent hitting coaches around the country that bought, all of our DVDs back in the day, in like the early 2000s, and then repackaged everything and came out with their own DVDs and their own online content based on all of that same information, and credit was due, and sure they'll change stuff or maybe use a different word here and there, but it's what it is. You don't need footnotes anymore. So to each their own.
Nope, right? You don't need a bibliography.
No, you don't. You need sources page anymore.
If you are not watching this show on YouTube, check out our YouTube page. Just a quick reminder, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast for new episodes every Monday and archive previous episodes and clips. All right, let's get into today's topic, developing rhythm, even further. We kind of touched on it in the beginning. I think a lot of people don't really understand what developing rhythm actually means and how you go about it. Where do you start in developing rhythm?
I believe there's an internal baseline of a player's rhythm. Right. I think there's a DNA strand in there that you can't necessarily tell somebody to move like this or move like that. I think what you have to do as a quality coach is you have to draw that out. You have to, pull it out. Let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. I have tricks that I use that seem to work. I put them in positions that are a little bit different and a little bit uncomfortable compared to what they're used to. So if they're used to standing, 6 inches wider than their shoulders with their hands right here, I will put them in a different position that allows them to move freely. So like the walkthrough drill, remember the old walkthrough drill or the crossover drill, or a drill where you hit your hands down and bring them up, or you start with them high and you make a circle and bring it back. Anything to create movement will help players. And then what you'll see after, 100, 200, 300 reps is they'll take that giant movement that you've given them, that giant 180-degree rhythm movement from what they were doing before, and they'll start to make it their own without even thinking about it. They'll just kind of like, oh, okay, so I'm moving like that. I see it. I'll be like, okay. I might see it after 10 swings. They'll start to do something. I'm like, okay, that's their own twist on it. And then all of a sudden, 200-300 swings later, it's a different move. They still think they're doing that weird, crazy move that you gave them, but they've made it their own, and it's totally different now. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to turn on some music.
I was going to bring that up. Sorry to cut you off, but Dusty Baker subscribed to that theory, and I was going to ask if you feel the same way about getting music in the lab or wherever and helping that develop rhythm.
Yeah, we'll crank it up. The problem is music has such bad lyrics now. Like, geez. I got a lot of 10-year-olds in the lab, so we got to be careful what we put on there. But typically, if I put on Latin radio, the Latin dance club radio, it's got a great beat. Nobody can understand the lyrics anyway. And that actually creates kind of a fun environment. So, I'm a big Latin music guy because it's got a great beat. And guys can kind of, they just kind of feel it out. But, honestly, good dancers will end up being good hitters. And not everybody's a good dancer, but they can at least start to break some inertia. Like, what would the polar bear look like, at a dance club with his teammates, right? He would be the big, bulky guy in the middle that everybody's laughing at, but he's trying his best, right? He has that personality. He doesn't care. But when he gets in the box, right, he has kind of his own rhythm. He has this glide. He's got this, hand move with his hands kind of go down, back, and then boom, they slide forward. That's his way of doing it. I will say Latin players that I see, that I do all my reports on, they typically have more rhythm at a younger age, at age 13, 14, and 15 than Americans do at that age. So we do it a lot at the lab. Like, we focus a ton on rhythm and timing, and we do it by trying to get our players to move too soon. And then control that movement, so they have to buy time and wait for the ball, versus somebody that's constantly late moving, and then you're like, come on, you got to move earlier. We'll start to move earlier, see if they can control their weight and their balance, and then they'll usually have some kind of movement that's theirs, and then we'll kind of go from there with it. So those are just some little tricks to try. Is move earlier than you're used to without coming to a complete stop before you hit. And you'll have to do something athletic in order to do that.
What about developing rhythm, though, in your stance? It's kind of a tough thing. Getting comfortable prior to load and whatnot.
No, I agree. Yeah, sometimes what I'll do is like I said, I'll put them in a position where they can't hit from. That's new. Maybe their feet are really close together. Maybe their stance is really open. Maybe their hands are really low. Maybe their hands are really high. Anyway, they have to, kind of go from that position to a launch position. And so sometimes, if their hands are really low, maybe they'll, you'll start to see them bounce a little bit so that they can bounce them back up when they stride. I'll talk to players and just have them kind of move between their feet, the inside of their feet, the inside of their arch, kind of rock back and forth. I really don't like when guys are just standing perfectly still, but there are guys that do that.
Right.
I love Bryce Harper. He just kind of stands there with a bat on his shoulder, until it's time. And then boom, he lifts it up and starts to get after it. So again, to each their own. What you can do is throw stuff against the wall and see, hey, try this, try that. And then all of a sudden you'll always see them go back to what is in their DNA, what is in there. And if the DNA is bad and like they're just, then maybe they're just, not athletic. Right. And sometimes that's the case, right? Like, you don't know, like every 10-year-old you work with isn't going to be a high school baseball player, isn't going to be a college baseball player. So, you have to figure out, okay, that's too much for this kid at his age versus, okay, this kid might be a little special. We might be able to do some stuff with that.
I'm trying to connect the dots here. So in developing rhythm, does that how important is it in the stance? That's what I'm trying to ask, because when developing rhythm, what you're making it sound like is that it does have a little bit, just a little bit of some to do in the actual load, where some would
Mm-hmm.
say, well, it doesn't really matter how you start, how you stand. It's a matter of getting into a certain position. Is that kind of a myth?
No, that's kind of what I think. You're
Okay.
starting at point A in your stance, and you have to get to the launch position, right? How do you
Yeah.
get there? Do you have big leg kicks, little leg kicks? Do you have an open stance? Do you have a closed stance? So that journey from I'm getting in the box, I just got my sign. I get in the box. I have 3 or 4 seconds, before the pitcher comes set or, goes into their windup. What is my journey to heel plant? And to me, that's rhythm. Okay, that's rhythm. It could be the reason you don't want to be flat-footed in the stance is because you want to be able to break inertia quickly and not choppy or sharp. Aggressively, you want to be moving so you can pick that foot up if that pitcher decides to slide step on you, or try to get quick to the plate and fool you. So you have to be, have to have weight kind of moving between your feet. So boom, you can pick your front foot up and start striding it soon. But for me, I really don't care as much how they stand, how they're there. I want them to be comfortable and most importantly, stress-free. Like I don't want any tension when they're standing there, because if I'm a pitcher, I'm going to hold my set position forever and make that player uncomfortable if they're tense, if they're just standing there, just kind of like waiting for you to move, and then they're not moving at all. There's no, no rhythm, no movement. So yeah, I really don't care how they stand. I just want to make sure from that standing position, that relaxed position, getting ready to stride, that they can get their foot going in a moment's notice.
And this next question I'm going to ask covers what coaches across the country, across the globe might be wondering. When watching video or trying to duplicate video, how do you look for rhythm on video of your swing? Or how do you look for some certain aspect of your swing on video that could help develop rhythm even more?
The best way is to attend the Epstein coaching training, October.
The promo's too early. You did the promo too early. You're jet lagged. You're jet lagged.
A secret. That's a difficult.
That's a secret.
To pick up. That's difficult on video, but sometimes it has to do with time. I'll just put it that way. How long does it take? Do you have a timer? You can kind of figure that out. But typically it's more of a fast. You'll play at full speed. And to me, just because I've looked at 458,000 swings before, I can see if it's too fast. Like it's like a scout that watches the guy throw, and they're like, "Geez, that ball, that's a loose arm, right? That ball just flies out of his fingers." It's kind of that same way with me, where I can hit. I always break it down in as frame by frame to check mechanics. But when I'm looking at rhythm and timing, I always play those full speed, because I can just tell if something's a little bit jumpy, if they're moving late and fast. I can just pick it up. But you could use a timer too.
Yeah. You, sir, are the very definition of 10,000 hours of practice. You have watched 10,000 hours of swings. That's why you're the expert.
No doubt about it.
You mentioned loose arms in there with the pitcher. Speaking of which, we have a listener question that comes to us via jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. And this comes to us from JJ, a loyal listener to the show, always writes in great questions. And he has another one here from Plymouth High School, Shawnee. That's where he said he was from. Plymouth High School, Shawnee, Indians. Pennsylvania. JJ writes to us. He says, Dear Jim and Jake, I have some questions about Jack Leiter, who I think is a tremendous pitcher. None of them were addressed on MLB's draft coverage, though his college coach was one of the analysts. First, Leiter was eligible for the draft because he was 21, though only a sophomore. If he was 20, he would have to wait until after the conclusion of his junior year. Is that correct? I can answer that. Yes, it is. Secondly, if he didn't like who drafted him and how much money they offered him, could he go back to college? I can answer that too. Yes, probably, right? Thirdly, he has been well schooled by his father, Al Leiter, in not only pitching mechanics and how to pitch, but also how to play the system. College sophomores usually aren't 21 years old. They are 19 or 20. Was he held back from starting school, or was he held back in high school for a year when they realized he could be an MLB prospect? I'm not sure you can answer that question, nor can it be answered. And I'm not indicating Al Leiter of gaming the system at all. Indicting, excuse me, indicating. I can't read. I'm not indicting Al Leiter of gaming the system at all. I credit him for figuring it all out and doing what's best for his son. I agree. Thanks. And that's from JJ from Plymouth High School, Shawnee Indians. JJ, great question. Thank you for writing in to jimbopodcast21@gmail.com.
There's leverage. What people need to know is there's an open line of communication between every team and every player.
Yeah.
Of what it's going to take to sign you. So out of high school, he was probably 19, right? Would be my guess.
Well, I was also, for the record, when I entered my freshman year of college, I was 19. I had just turned 19. So there are those right. So those cases are.
I don't know when his birthday is. If he's like August,
he could have been
September,
late,
birthday,
or early, I should say, in first grade,
boys,
old for his grade.
Yeah, I will say that boys typically, I have two daughters with July birthdays, and they're very, very young for their age.
Yeah.
We just put them in school. Like, that was the cutoff. They could be young. So, my daughter's going to graduate when she's 17.
Yeah.
But it's not that she is too young, because they said if you're after this cutoff. Now, if she was a boy, would we have held her back for sports purposes at that moment? Maybe, right? Like, that extra year for me was absolutely huge. So I was actually very young my whole life. I have an August birthday. And when I was it my eighth grade year, so junior high, my appendix ruptured. And I was in the hospital for, I think, 2 months, 2.5 months. I missed the entire second half of my eighth grade junior high year. And I had to redo eighth grade that fall. And I'm telling you, if I was the same person when I graduated high school, but I graduated my junior year instead of my senior year, I don't think I would have been big enough and strong enough to compete in college.
Yeah.
No doubt. I still grew 4 inches after college. So imagine if I was a year younger. So there is a huge benefit, to being older. Now, Jack also was probably going to be a first round pick out of high school.
Yeah. Also, too, did COVID have something to do with it as well?
I don't think no, because he really only pitched.
No, I'm talking about the age.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because he was at Vanderbilt. His first year was 2020 was COVID. So his 2020 season, he only played a few games, but that was his freshman. That was his freshman year. Now he could stay in college for probably 3 more years. Essentially, it's with COVID, he could keep going. So, that's one of them. I don't think the system was gamed. I think people do that all the time.
Oh yeah,
and some people and most people don't get drafted in the first round. So I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it would have hurt him if he went back for 1 more year of college, and now he was 22 as a junior. Now he's a little bit older, and he's got another 2,000 pitches under his belt. Maybe that's different. He probably would have been a high school sign. He and Rocker should have both been high school signs. But when Vanderbilt says, "Hey, why don't you come here and play and get the start of an education?" Are they ever going to go back and finish their education? I don't know.
Yeah.
But when you're an institution that might have extra scholarship money and opportunities, why not go after the best players in the world? Anyway, we were right about Leiter being ahead of Rocker. I saw that as well. I'm trying to think of any of his other questions in there. Yeah, I don't know if he was held back. He definitely could sign. But yeah, they have the deal set up.
Yeah.
They have the deal set up.
Yeah, we answered everything before. I think there.
Yeah, first rounders aren't going to go back to college. If there's any doubt from that team that kid isn't going to get the money. So if you say, "Hey, Jack, we want to draft you, whatever. Your slot money is $7 million. We would like to, we can afford to give you, that full amount, $7 million." And Jack says, "You know what? I want $10 million."
Mm-hmm.
They're going to say, "Okay, we can't afford that. We're not going to draft that player." If they say, "Jack, we can only afford to give you $6 million because we got to save money for the cap for down the road," and Jack says, "You know what? I want my slot money," then they might pass on him as well. So there's all kinds of pre-draft negotiations going on, and there has been for years. They're
Yeah,
not going to pick somebody they know they're not going to sign.
and the slot money has changed the game too, because guys could be
Totally.
drafted later or in next couple of rounds, second, third, maybe the fourth round, and get the actual over the slot because money was saved on a previous draft pick.
Well,
in the first,
they have
round.
the pools, right? They have
Correct.
their draft pool. They have X amount of millions of dollars to spend on its 20 rounders.
Yeah.
What I don't know is how does that work for free agents?
That's
like, could you give a free agent $5 million?
Okay.
Agent.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about getting a competitive balance round pick because you lose a free agent. You're talking about college free agents.
A college free agent. Say there's this really good guy.
Well, it's a good question, but I think that if they're a free agent, they're a free agent for a reason. They would have been a 21st, 22nd, 23rd round pick. They probably wouldn't have gotten. Are you talking
about? They had
a
big number.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe they had a big number and they scared everyone.
Maybe.
But they're worth it. I don't know. I mean, there were a lot of college.
But what are
players.
they? But really, if they're free agents, what are they worth at that point? Because they would be theoretically round 21 in the older draft, 21 to 40. So what are they really worth? They can't be worth more than 50,000, if that.
Say you have a Jack Leiter. Okay, so you have a Jack Leiter, and he's 18 years old.
Yeah,
and he throws 98 miles an hour, and he says, "You know what? I'm going to go to Vanderbilt."
Okay.
And so every major league team says, "You sure you want to go to Vanderbilt? You can be a first rounder and make $4 or $5 million."
Yeah.
He says, "No, I'm going to go to Vanderbilt." So you do all your draft, right? You draft your 20, 30, or 20, 25 guys, through all your draft picks. And then all of a sudden you're like, you know what? Really like this kid. Let's see if we can persuade him from not going. Hey, Jack, we'll give you $8 million for free agent sign not to go to Vanderbilt. And they didn't have to waste a draft pick. Is that a possibility?
But why wouldn't you? But why wouldn't you just negotiate that and then draft in the first round?
Because it would be way over slot money, and it would come out of your pool.
Well, I understand that. Pool. I understand, but I'm saying afterwards, why would you all of a sudden change if you're a team and say, "Well, we're going to give you $8 million now"? We didn't want to do it.
Oh, we're just try. Yeah. Oh, we didn't risk anything. We're just trying to lure him.
So you're looking at the risk and reward.
Yeah, like, hey, it didn't cost me a draft pick to try to sign this guy, but I'm going to throw him a big number that would have been a first round number, but I didn't want to risk a first round number, but I'm going to give him all this money that doesn't come out of my pool. I figure it would have to come out of the pool or something.
But that's what I'm saying. So I think what you're doing though, if you do that, you take that money out of the pool. Now you're shortchanging somebody who was drafted in the later rounds, who's a really good player, but doesn't have as much leverage. Then again, if he doesn't have much leverage, he's going to sign anyway, but you're taking money away.
There were so many. Right. I mean, how about like the Christian Franklins that I don't know what round he got drafted in, the 6th, 8th, 9th. Yeah. He was supposed to be a first rounder. Is it Casey Opitz, the Arkansas catcher? My goodness, this guy's like an acrobat back there.
Well, who's the right-handed pitcher? The right-handed pitcher too. He was supposed to be drafted in the first round. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he went a little later. He's not a hard, overpowering thrower. Yeah, he's just the Golden Spikes winner. God forbid he gets people out, but he's not an overpowering guy, so he wasn't going to be. But there were a lot of college players that didn't go as high as they were supposed to. Yeah. And I don't know if they were just asking for too much money and they got passed over. Well, it'll be interesting to see how many of those guys get over slot money, or they go back to college, like Christian Franklin, who's I think he's a terrific player with a swing plane issue. So he's got a pretty mediocre year this year, but I think he's special talent if he gets that figured out. So will he go back to Arkansas or will he sign? I don't know.
What would you do?
Because he should have been. He was first round material. Like, should have been a first rounder, and he wasn't anywhere near the first.
So what would you do then? Go back to Arkansas, or would you sign? Well, it's tough. Depends on the money, right?
If they gave me over slot money, if they're going to give me $400,000 or $500,000, and I probably could have made $5 million.
I'm going back to college.
I go back to college. It'll be his 4th year, though. He'll have less leverage next year, but if he performs, it doesn't matter. People still want him. All you got to have is 5 or 6 teams that want you, and you'll go in the first round.
Yeah.
if you're that good.
Well, keep in mind too, Austin Davis wasn't even the top 300 to begin the year.
Yeah.
And he went number 1 overall. So things change.
Yeah.
I wonder how much he's going to sign for. That'll be interesting as well.
Yeah. Wonder if it was a deal.
But then again, if you're going picking number 1 overall, you're not worried about negotiating slot money as much as you are getting the right player. I think in the first 10 picks, that's the unspoken rule. After that, now you can kind of play the system as JJ put it, play the system a little bit more because you have to in a way.
You have to.
Well, isn't it fun? Isn't it just all just fun? Next week we are discussing. Well, we're not really discussing. We'll discuss the swing of Jonathan India, but we're going to break it down. Our Mechanical Breakdown series returns next week, talking about Jonathan India. Yes, we've got 3 Mechanical Breakdown series that are coming up in a very short time frame. We're going to do Shohei Ohtani. It's another one. We got to do Ichiro sometime too. But we're going to do Jonathan India next week and then Shohei Ohtani in a few weeks after that. So Jonathan India, his swing next week, and he's one of the guys that you absolutely love. You love his swing. You loved it coming out of college, and you like it now.
I think so. I loved it coming out of college.
Maybe not so much now.
Yeah, we'll see.
We're gonna discuss.
I mean, hey, I'll be honest. Well, 2 things. Although I forgot what you just said. Something sparked my interest. Jonathan India.
He wears his pants above his knees.
Yeah, I saw Austin Martin taking BP in the Futures game.
Yeah. His
swing is totally different than I remember at Vanderbilt. Not for the good.
No.
I don't know what it like.
We'll have to discuss that off air.
We may have to discuss that. Yeah, I mean, that's your turn. But I was not excited about what I saw because I really like Austin Martin.
I did too.
And maybe it was just a bad group of 5 or 6 swings, but that barrel was doing all kinds of different things that I remember it doing in person, and that's not a good thing for him. So anyway.
Discuss that off air. We discuss Jonathan India next week, though. Mechanical Breakdown series, volume. I don't remember. I'll figure it out. Anything coming up at the lab? Anything? I know you got the Sandlot games that are returning. I got that email. What else is going on at the lab? BCS.
Yeah, man. We have we're putting together a really cool product, and you're hearing this first.
Yes. And watching it first.
Like a combine program where we have a great strength coach. Steve Price came in from Rutgers, and we hired him about a month and a half ago, and we have wonderful technology, right? We have laser time 60 ability. We have force measurements. We have, laser vertical jump or force vertical jump, right? So we have all this technology where you can't lie and you can't cheat. And so we want to take our players and put them through a combine-like testing of, bat speed, exit velocity, arm speed, pull downs, throwing from the outfield, throwing from the mound, 60-yard dash, shuttle runs, vertical jump, how many times can you bench press the bar, all these things depending on age group. But then we retest it every 2 months. Mm-hmm. And what are your deficiencies and what are strengths? Okay, you need to do this. You need to fix this. You need to do this. And then all of a sudden, hopefully we're going to start to see these graphs move the right direction. So that's a new product we're going to start doing on the weekends this fall, and we're really, really excited about it. So, and the connections we have in college baseball allow us to be a trusted source. Because it's me and the technology and Steve Price that we can send out these videos for kids and we can show them, look, this is a legitimate time. Like if you're interested, if you need a shortstop, if you need a second baseman, you can trust our video and our data. So anyway, it's kind of a new service we're putting out there and we're excited to launch it.
Alrighty. Well, good stuff. We will talk to everybody next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, email us jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we will talk to you next week. Take care.